Hey everybody, welcome to Entrepreneurship 3100. We are going to have a ton of fun in this class, and this is our very first module, very first lecture. And essentially what we're going to do in this lecture is just introduce the concept of entrepreneurship. Who is an entrepreneur? What kind of traits do entrepreneurs have? What kind of mindset do they have? All these things we'll go through as we move through these slides today to help lay a foundation for us to understand how to be an entrepreneur, whether we want to or not, how to be an entrepreneur and what kind of traits they have and what kind of things that they do. This is the lecture that's going to cover some of those basic items, and looking forward to discussing it more. Okay, so let's jump right in. What is an entrepreneur? I'm going to go through several different definitions as we go through the next few slides, just to kind of give you an idea of the different variations, the different ways that people or entities, businesses look at entrepreneurship and who an entrepreneur is. And so let's start with this one. I think at its most basic definition, really an entrepreneur is someone who starts their own business. And I think for the most part, we as a society feel comfortable with that definition. If we go to Harvard Business School, they say entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. And really they're just saying what we already said in maybe a little fancier way. You can go out and create something without having control of all the resources or things at your disposal. And so really when it comes down to it, an entrepreneur is someone that's going to start their own business. And so if you remember anything from these first few slides, remember that an entrepreneur is really just somebody that starts their own business. Okay, now let's look at another definition, and this is a definition from The Economist magazine, and really this is kind of two definitions in one. The Economist talks about how an entrepreneur is really defined in two distinctive ways. The first one being it's somebody that runs their own business, runs their own company, which we already mentioned before, right? The second one, though, is this idea that an entrepreneur is somebody that comes up with ideas. They're innovators. And a lot of times when people think about innovators, we think of people like Elon Musk, for example, right? Very innovative as an entrepreneur. From PayPal to Tesla to SpaceX to The Boring Company to so many other things. Neuralink, lots of different companies that are very innovative, very cutting edge. And that may be some people's definition of entrepreneurship, that you must be an innovator, an idea creator, to actually be an entrepreneur. But I don't necessarily think that's always the case. That may be a type of an entrepreneur. They're more innovative in nature, but I think you can be somebody that just takes an existing idea, creates a business, creates a company, and helps grow and thrive that business with an existing idea that may already be out in the world. So those are two distinctive views from The Economist. All right, now, finally, our final definition, let's look at what the U.S. Small Business Administration has to say about what an entrepreneur is. They say an entrepreneur is a person who organizes and manages a business undertaking, assuming the risk for the sake of profit. Now, the reason I like this definition in this series of slides is that very last portion of the sentence that says they're going to assume the risk for the sake of profit. I think it is important that when we talk about entrepreneurship, about being an entrepreneur, there is some discussion about risk. And we'll talk a little bit more about this a little later on in the lecture. But risk is really a key component to entrepreneurship. Now, you could be a very risk-averse entrepreneur, meaning you don't like to take a lot of risk, or you could be very risk-tolerant. And I think there's probably a sliding scale in terms of the kind of entrepreneur you can be when it comes to risk. But an important point to make sure you're aware of and understand when we talk about entrepreneurship. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about maybe what an entrepreneur is not. Okay, a freelancer. You've probably heard that term thrown around before. A freelancer is really somebody that has a certain set of skills, something they do, maybe a task or a job or something they can provide to people, but they're not hired by a particular company. And so, yes, they are running their own company. And so I think in that way, they are kind of an entrepreneur, but kind of not in the fact that they still rely on being quote unquote hired by businesses to perform a certain task. Maybe it's create a logo, or something like that. And so when I say freelancers are not really entrepreneurs, I think you can still be an entrepreneur if you're a freelancer. I'm just trying to help you wrap your mind around the idea that entrepreneurship is not just going out and freelancing, performing a task for a bunch of people. While it could be, it's not just that. I think it entails more than that. Because really that's just contract work. They're selling their services, which some entrepreneurship companies are doing that as well. But these, when we look at it this way, it's more like a consultant, right? Not somebody that's taking an idea, being innovative, selling the idea, and building a customer base. It's more of, hey, I'm just going to consult you or teach you or show you this thing that is already out in the world. So again, I only make that distinction so that we can really drill down on defining what an entrepreneur is. Not to say that any freelancer cannot be an entrepreneur. I think probably most of them are entrepreneurial nature than are not. But again, just to help you understand kind of those differences, those subtle changes from one type of entrepreneur to another. Okay, so some of you may have heard of the Ultra Spiritual Life or J.P. Spears. I'm kind of a fan in some ways anyways. I think he comes up with pretty funny, catchy, fun to listen to bits on a variety of topics. This particular one is about entrepreneurship. And so I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes we get so serious about, hey, we're hustling, we're making money, we're doing all these cool things, and we don't have time to have fun and we don't have time to laugh. I don't really like that, because I think the whole idea of being an entrepreneur or having a company of your own and letting it run the way you want it to is so that you can build the kind of life that you want to. And so part of my thing that's important to me is laughing, having fun, and enjoying the lighter side of life. Okay, and so that's why I like to play this videos, because JP Spears does a good job of making light of entrepreneurship, and especially some of the crazy culture that comes with entrepreneurship in general. So I'm going to play this video, and then we'll move on to the next one. Okay, let's. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. Like I said, I get a kick out of JP Spears, and never take yourself too seriously, I think is the is the life lesson there. But now we're going to jump into myths about entrepreneurship, because I will bet you that most of you have this preconceived idea about entrepreneurship in your mind, thinking that, hey, if I don't live a certain way, or I don't act a certain way, or I don't eat a certain way, or I don't exercise a certain way, I can't be the kind of entrepreneur that is portrayed out in the world. Okay, and I'm telling you right now, that is false. I've met so many different kinds of entrepreneurs, all of them having different traits, attributes, strengths, weaknesses, things that they're good at, things that they're bad at. And that's okay. That's what makes entrepreneurship fun, is that we see a variety of different approaches and takes and businesses, because every person is different, has their own personality, approaches it their own way. So as we cover these myths, I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, that really anyone can be an entrepreneur. It just depends on what kind of work you're willing to put in, and whether you can be innovative and be smart when you work. Okay. So the first myth: you're born an entrepreneur, and if you're not born one, you can't do it. And whether you admit it to yourself or not, I'll bet there's many of you that think, yeah, it's probably true, that you need to be born to think a certain way or act a certain way, or you need to be born to be outgoing and social so that you can create connections and network and all those things, right? It's not the case. If you're not born an entrepreneur, you can become an entrepreneur. And I don't even think people are really born entrepreneurs. I think the experiences we have in our life shape us to act and work and live in a certain way. And so maybe you just haven't had those experiences yet, or maybe you need to go pursue them, find them yourself. And so if somebody tells you, hey, you're born one or you're not, that's not true. You can become an entrepreneur, and you can become a great entrepreneur depending on who you want to be and what you want to do. Again, there's a lot of people that have been young, old, middle-aged, male, female, whatever, however you identify yourself, that have become really successful entrepreneurs because they've put their mind to it, they've been innovative, they've worked smart, and done all those things to create success. Really, this is just a nice story that people like to use, that, oh, when this person was born and they were a kid and they were a baby, they were selling lemonade and they were so successful and yada, 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 right? So don't let that deter you from being the kind of entrepreneur that you want to be, because I truly, truly believe anybody can shape and become the kind of person or entrepreneur that they want to be. Okay, let's move on to myth number 2. Okay, you need to be very smart and talented to be a successful entrepreneur. Is it absolutely wrong? Not absolutely wrong, but I know a lot of entrepreneurs that aren't necessarily naturally smart or talented or gifted in any certain way, but they've still been able to be innovative or creative or work hard or smart and done really, really well for themselves. So yeah, is it great to be talented or smart like an Elon Musk, who in my opinion is kind of like almost like a real world genius a little bit? I mean, that may be going a little far, but extremely bright, extremely smart, can pick up a variety of different topics and do really, really well at them. But does that mean you can't be an entrepreneur if you don't know how to build a rocket ship like Elon Musk? No. You can be every bit as successful and do every bit as much good as somebody like Elon Musk. So, not all entrepreneurs are going to be talented or intelligent naturally. You can develop those things, you can work hard, you can work smart, you can be creative. But I think the most important things are, like I mentioned here on the slide, if you have perseverance, if you work hard and you work smart, I should put that in there too, and have confidence in yourself, usually that's going to bridge the gap between you and anybody else that may have more natural capability, more natural ability. So don't ever let anybody tell you that because you're not smart or talented in a certain way, you can't become successful, because I know that you certainly can, especially if you're willing to put in the work when it comes to these other traits like persevering, work ethic, confidence, etc. Okay, so don't be shy about who you are. Knock those 3 things out. You'll do every bit as well as anybody else. Okay, as a continuation from our myth number 2, let's talk a little bit more about that. Here on the slide, you can see great entrepreneurs are great at coordinating other people and finding talent. And I cannot emphasize this point enough, that some of the very best entrepreneurs I've known and observed and seen are those that have been able to surround themselves with people that are smarter, more talented, more innovative, etc. Surround themselves with those kinds of people to lift them up as a whole, lift their business up as a whole, and that's really been the thing that has propelled them forward the most. And so the reason I bring this up is because a lot of people jump into entrepreneurship and they think to themselves, I need to do this on my own. This is going to be my lone journey. I've got to be the smart one. I've got to be the innovator. I've got to be the coordinator, the networker, all these things, right? And I'm telling you, the greatest shortcut in entrepreneurship and building a successful business is to find other people to fill in those gaps. Find other people that do the things really well that you don't do well. Because when you do that, it really becomes so easy to focus on your strengths and let your partners or your employees or the people around you focus on theirs, and collectively you'll build a thriving, strong business because all of you are hitting on different cylinders that are helping the business progress in a really significant way. So surround yourself with great people, because really that's what it is. You spot the brilliant people, you spot the innovators, you spot the people that are organized or people that know how to structure business or whatever it is you need, and that will carry you farther than any self-help, any self-study, any self-development. While you still should do that, finding those people and allowing them to be a part of your business and do those things collectively together will give you the biggest bang for your buck. Okay, we're on to myth number 3 and myth number 4. So buckle up here. Myth number 3, you need to have a lot of money. Is it great to have a lot of money? Sure. It would be great to start as an entrepreneur with a lot of money, because then you could throw money into a lot of different opportunities, and even if they don't work, you could continue to chug forward, right? But what we teach here at SUU, and what I strongly believe in terms of a new entrepreneur coming into this world and trying something new, I strongly, strongly believe that you should learn how to bootstrap, right? That means start a business with very little to no money and understand how to be creative and innovative in a way that allows you to still build a successful business without having to have lots of cash or lots of money to make it actually work. Okay. The world gets caught up in the idea of unicorns, right? These are the billion-dollar valuation companies. And a lot of times these are the ones that say, hey, here's an idea, here's a concept, and it's innovative, it's creative, it's new, and let's go find funding now. They don't really prove the concept in terms of selling it to the end customer or selling it to the end business. They go and try to find money first and let the collection of money from venture capitalists and from investors and those sorts, it lets that kind of prove their business, when in reality it should be the opposite. We should prove our business by selling it to our end user, whether that's a business or a consumer, and then grow and expand from there. And that's part of this idea of not needing a lot of money to get started, as long as you're innovative, you're scrappy, you do those things to grow in the beginning. Okay, so that's myth number 3. Myth number 4, you need to be really lucky. Now, while I do agree that there is some component of luck to really anything we do in our life, and you could call it, divine providence or luck or whatever it is you want to call it, however you want to define it. There is some luck certainly in entrepreneurship, some divine providence, some outside forces that maybe we can't control all the time, some timing issues or timing benefit that we can't control all the time. That is true, but I think a lot of times the luck is created by how we persevere, how we work. Are we smart when we work? Are we surrounding ourselves with good people, etc.? Now, that doing all those things doesn't always mean you're going to be successful, but doing those things gives you a higher probability, a greater probability to be successful because you've put all the right pieces in place. Okay, so yeah, there is maybe some luck, some component of that to entrepreneurship. But I do truly believe that if you build it the right way, you put the right people around you, you work hard at it, you're smart, you're innovative, you're all those things, you kind of start to create the luck for yourself. And that's really what it comes down to. So don't let outside forces, outside people control or dictate the way you're going to act or behave, especially when it comes to building your own business. Okay, so let's talk about some common personality traits in entrepreneurs. And again, I talk about this not to say, hey, you need to possess these traits to be an entrepreneur, but to say that these are some common ones that seem to be consistent with those entrepreneurs that do well. And so it may be something to consider. If you don't have some of these traits, these strengths, something you could perhaps work on, right? Now, before we jump into those though, I want to say again, I truly believe anybody can be an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, what kind of skills, talent, smarts you have starting out, what kind of money you have starting out. I truly believe anybody can be an entrepreneur. And I think that's key to you moving forward, is having that belief that anybody can be an entrepreneur. Okay, so that's first and foremost. Don't get discouraged as we go through these traits and think, oh, I'm not outgoing, or I'm not, whatever it is this way naturally. Don't get discouraged, because again, every entrepreneur is different, and some may have none of these traits we're going to talk about and still do really well. And so don't feel like just because you don't have some of these traits, you can't go out and do really important things and do a lot of good and make money and serve people in a great way. So I want to just mention that before we jump into the traits. But let's go ahead and jump into the traits, and we'll talk a little bit about them. Okay, so first one on our list, confidence. And I don't mean to turn this lecture into a Tony Robbins session, or hey, let's build you up and let's self-develop. But to be honest, entrepreneurship is really one of the best self-development courses you'll ever take, because as you jump into entrepreneurship and you start to realize what it takes to be successful, you'll start to recognize your own faults. You'll recognize your own holes in your personality, or in your work ethic, or in your smarts, or in your talent, or whatever it might be. And you start to work on those things so that you can be more well-rounded and you can better provide the kind of skill, expertise, and work that you need to make a successful business, okay? So confidence, when we talk about confidence, really the key here is it's easier to sell something if and when you believe in yourself, okay? I can't tell you the difference that confidence has made in my own life personally. And again, I'm not always confident all the time. There's things I'm not confident in. But as I've continued to try and develop my confidence and believe in who I am and believe in the person I've become, it has made it so much easier for me to teach. It's made it so much easier for me to build a business. It's made it so much easier for me to be a better person, a better husband, a better father, all those things, because I have confidence in who I'm becoming or trying to become and in who I am now. And so if we could if we could step away from this entrepreneurship idea just for a minute and just talk to you as a student and let me say to you that confidence is going to be so key in your life. And so don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't do something or you can't be someone or you can't act a certain way or live a certain way, because when you lose that confidence and you don't believe in who you are or who you want to become, life becomes a lot harder to be successful, a lot harder to gain momentum and traction in trying to build up and become the kind of person you want to become or build the kind of business you want to build. And so confidence is so, so key. And so it just hurts my heart anytime I see somebody that I know just doesn't have confidence in themselves. They feel nervous about who they are, or they feel ashamed about who they are, whatever. Be confident in who you are. Strive to be a good person, strive to do good to other people. And as you do that, you'll start to blossom, and it'll be easier to sell. It'll be easier to network. It'll be easier to find good people to bring around you. And, life will be better. I promise you that. Just finding that confidence. Okay. So confident, number one. Number two, gregarious. What does that mean? What is gregarious? Think to yourself, what is gregarious? Do you know what that means? Really, that just means, are you outgoing? Are you social? Can you talk to people? Are you a people person? And really, gregarious doesn't mean that you're naturally outgoing, you're naturally a people person. Gregarious can be developed, and I can tell you that because naturally for me, I'm very much introverted, and for me, most of the time, I would rather be on my own, working on my own, not talking to other people. But I've found that as I've opened myself up to socializing, to talking with people, to networking with people, it's actually provided me with greater energy, greater motivation. And so for me, it's been a really key development. And I'm not saying I'm 100% there. I could still get better as far as the way I interact, the way I socialize, and the way I utilize that talent or that skill that we try to develop. But growing and becoming better at it has certainly been a huge impact in my life, okay? Because, again, it'll just make it easier to connect with people, to find those brilliant, good people to bring around you. It'll make it easier to sell to people because your confidence tends to correlate with how gregarious or outgoing you are. And so doing those things collectively together will certainly help you as an entrepreneur. But again, if you don't have all of them naturally, that's okay. These are things that can be developed and worked on. And even if these are not your strong suits, that's okay too. You can still be successful. Okay. Common personality traits 3 and 4. First one, forward thinking. And really all that is you're somewhat innovative, right? You're forward thinking in terms of you're seeing a broader perspective of the world, of the industry you're in, of the niche you're working in, because that's going to help you stay at the cutting edge, right? It's going to help you not get lost in the weeds or beat by competitors or anything like that. And so the more forward thinking you are, the easier it is to stay on top of trends, the easier it is to build successful businesses because you are on the cutting edge. Now, there are times when being too forward thinking has been detrimental because the world may not be ready for the innovation or the new thing you're bringing them. But for the most part, this is a positive trait to have because it does keep you in the forefront of whatever niche, business, industry you're in. And so that forward thinking idea is important. And you can think somebody like Elon Musk, right? Very forward thinking in terms of the innovation and the way that the world can be better by adding certain things. Now, whether you're a fan of Elon Musk or not, that's up to you. There's things I like and don't like about him, but certainly very forward thinking. Good example of that. Okay, action oriented. And of all these things we talked about, really the confidence factor and then the action oriented factor, I think are probably the very most important. We'll talk about one at the very end that is key as well, but I think these are super important. Action-oriented, probably near the top of my list, because so many times during my few years here at SGU, I've seen students that have come to me and said, hey, I've got this great idea, and I am confident it's going to do great, and it's going to make me lots of money, and it's going to do lots of good for the world. And I believe them, and I trust that the idea is great, and I think it is great most of the time. But the key detriment to those students actually seeing the fruits of their labor and seeing the way that they can serve and help other people with their idea is this idea of action. They fail to take the necessary action to actually see if this idea can come to fruition. Okay? And so what I'm imploring you to do is anytime you have an idea or something you want to pursue, something you want to do in your life, the most important thing you can do is just take action. Don't get caught up in the idea that, oh, I need to organize and I need to make sure everything is perfect before I get started. We use the business example and people say, hey, I've been working on a logo in my website for the last 6 months on my business. And then I'll follow up and I'll say, hey, well, have you sold anything to anybody? Oh, not yet, but I got to wait till everything is perfectly in place. No, don't do that. Please don't do that. In fact, if you're not embarrassed about your first product or your first service or your first thing you've offered your customers, then you've waited way too long to put it out in the market, which means you're not taking the action that you should have been taking in your business. So again, if you leave with anything from this lecture, leave with the idea that action is going to be absolutely key to you being successful. And with that, action and lots of failure that'll probably come as a result of that action, be okay with that. Because failure is just another word for learning, right? We're learning ways to do it or not do it, and you don't know that, you can't learn that unless you're actually taking action. So please be action takers. I actually have a shirt that was given to me by another entrepreneur that has kind of been a mentor to me in many ways that says #action takers. Okay. And I always love that because, and it may seem a little cheesy, but I always love that shirt because it just reminds me that nothing is going to happen, nothing's going to get done, no success is going to be had unless I'm willing to go out and do something. Go take some action regarding that thing. So, take action. Okay, let's talk about the marshmallow test and how it relates to personality traits with entrepreneurs. You've probably heard of the marshmallow test, maybe seen it on social media. There's all kinds of trends happening, so you never know. But essentially the marshmallow test was they brought kids into a room and they set a marshmallow down in front of them and they said, hey, you have two choices. You can eat this marshmallow right now, but you're not going to get another one. Or you can wait until tomorrow and not eat it right now. And if you wait until tomorrow, we'll give you a second marshmallow. We'll give you another one. And so obviously a lot of kids, especially, children, is they want to have something right now, right? Especially a big, sugary, fluffy marshmallow, right? But there were some kids that understood the benefit of waiting, that if they waited an extra day, they're going to get not just one, but two big, fluffy, sugary marshmallows. And there's been some study and analysis on this, that those children that were willing or able to wait until tomorrow to get more marshmallow would also tend to be better entrepreneurs. Now you ask yourself, well, why would that be the case? Why does it matter if they're willing to wait for a marshmallow? Well, because in entrepreneurship, that's really kind of a big part of the game, is that if you're looking for instant gratification and you want money now, you want success now, and you don't want to wait or work for it, then entrepreneurship may not be your thing. Maybe you need to go and find a job immediately where you can be employed and they can give you the paycheck every couple weeks, and you can just rely on that as long as you do your part. Entrepreneurship really takes a lot of upfront work, a lot of work in the beginning without the result coming back, without the return coming back, without understanding or knowing if your work is actually going to be in vain or not. And so being able to wait for that, delay your gratification, is an important aspect in entrepreneurship, because a lot of times that's just how it works when you're building a business. Nothing is going to be built overnight. No success is built overnight. And it's going to take time and effort and consistency before you see money, before you see growth, before you see any of those things. And so this marshmallow test can be a good indicator or a good reminder to us that as entrepreneurs, we need to be okay waiting, okay working now, and getting gratification, satisfaction, or success later on. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's talk about survivor's bias as it relates to these personality traits we've been talking about. A lot of these personality traits we've been talking about, we know these because we're able to observe, study, research, and see entrepreneurs that are out in the world that are successful. And so we kind of collect these traits from them. Now, this idea of survivor's bias is that the common traits that we usually notice in entrepreneurs are the ones that are still in business, which means there could be more people out there that just made a lot of money and quit, and they have certain traits that are different than these ones, but we just don't know that because we can't observe them, because they're not still out there in the world building their business. Okay? So again, the reason I bring this up is to say that just because you don't have all these traits, or maybe you only have one of them, or two of them, or whatever it is, don't feel like you can't be a successful entrepreneur. I cannot drive that home enough, especially in this beginning class, because I would love for you all to be entrepreneurs, and I would love for you to all jump into that world and grow and progress in that world. And so don't feel like you can't make it just because you don't have one of these traits. So this survivor's bias is just another way of explaining that, hey, just because you're not like this or act a certain way doesn't mean you can't make it. Okay? Okay, and then just to drive this home one more time, again, it's less usual for entrepreneurs to be introverted, but there's plenty of people that are introverted and have had great success. Okay, plenty of introverted entrepreneurs have had great success. Now, if you have the opposite of all these traits, may it be a little harder to jump in and be an entrepreneur in a certain type of way. Sure. But again, that doesn't mean that you can't be the entrepreneur that you want to be or you can't find success. Because, yes, many of the entrepreneurs you see out in the world that are building successful businesses, that are doing great things, have some of these traits. But there's lots of other ones that we don't know about, that we can't see, that we don't observe, that probably have different traits or opposite traits, and they're still doing really, really, really well for themselves. So again, I say that to say, yeah, these personality traits are great. Work on them for sure if you can, if you don't feel like you're there on all of them. But don't get discouraged in the fact that you don't have them so you can't move forward and can't be successful, because you certainly can. Okay? Okay, let's talk about risk tolerance. And I mentioned this before that this is one of the traits we're going to talk about that's going to be really key to who you are as an entrepreneur. And really risk tolerance is, are you willing to take risks? Are you not? Right? You can be risk averse or risk tolerant. The reason this is important because most startups, most new businesses, most ventures as an entrepreneur are going to fail. And that's just the nature of the beast. And so you have to be somewhat risk tolerant to be an entrepreneur. You have to be okay with this idea of most likely failing. Because if you're not, then it's going to be a really discouraging path for you. It's going to be a really difficult path for you. And this not only means risk tolerant in terms of just not succeeding, but risk tolerant with money if you're using money to start. Risk tolerant with relationships if you're using relationships in your business. Risk tolerant with your network and the people you're rubbing shoulders with. All these things can have a risk tolerant component to them. And so as an entrepreneur, you can be really risk tolerant, you can be less risk tolerant, you can still be an entrepreneur anywhere in between, but just know that this is an important factor that you need to consider when you're building a new business. So risk-averse people, they like to calculate risk and avoid it, and they make insurances and tend to worry, whereas risk-tolerant people don't worry so much. They're optimistic. They're willing to take risk. They think things are going to work out. They think there's chances to succeed. I know one entrepreneur that was so risk tolerant that sometimes it made me a little nervous because he just believed that, hey, things are going to work out. No matter what, I'm just going to make sure they work out. And he was willing to leverage houses and cars and everything he had because he just believed that things were going to work out. Now, am I that risk tolerant? No, I'm not. I would say I probably land somewhere in the middle. I'm not super risk averse, but I'm also not super risk tolerant. And so I land somewhere in the middle. And so if you're anywhere on that spectrum, that's okay. Just understand that it's going to be different in building your business. So if you're more risk averse, maybe it takes you a little longer to build a business. Maybe it takes you more effort and time because you're not willing to throw everything out there. But it also means that you're safer. You have more insurance in terms of you not, selling the farm, not losing everything in your life because you're being too risk tolerant. Okay, and vice versa with risk tolerance. So just consider that when we talk about entrepreneurship and what venture you're getting into, because obviously it depends on the venture. Some are much more risk some are much more risky than others, whether it means money or time or effort or whatever it might be. And so just consider that as you jump into your new ventures. Okay, let's talk about age in entrepreneurship. Okay, because this is one thing that kind of drives me crazy, especially social media and in the news and on the internet, is this idea that like the best entrepreneurs, the sexiest entrepreneurs are these young 20-year-olds that have started $1 billion business, right? Like that almost never happens. Yeah, sure. Mark Zuckerberg, he has this unicorn story of, hey, I'm in Harvard, I drop out, I create Facebook, and I become a multi-billionaire, right? But for the most part, that is not how people's stories happen. For the most part, it's years of learning, years of growing, years of failure, trial and error. And then eventually you catch on to something that works really well and that you're able to grow and expand. And so don't be worried if, and all of you as college students most likely are younger. And if I have some older non-traditional students, that's great too. Don't worry. So whatever age you're at, whatever space in life you're at, don't feel like you can't be successful, because 95% of our successful entrepreneurs are over 30 and probably even over 40. I mean, it takes a lot of life experience and a lot of trial and error and growth to figure out how to make it work. And so be okay with that. And then I put in there, Mark Zuckerberg turned 30. There were 0 self-made billionaires under 30. That's changed now. There have been more of those. But again, a very, very, very few number of people are in that category. And so not saying you can't be there, but don't be discouraged if by 21 or 23 or 25 or 30, you're not a billionaire like Zuckerberg, right? That's okay. I mean, that's not all not what life is all about, in my opinion. And so be okay with trial and error, learning, growing, failing, and then moving forward that way. Okay, and then our final slide on age and entrepreneurship, and final slide of this lecture one, is just to kind of put a cap on this idea of age and entrepreneurship. A lot of young entrepreneurs will get funded by venture capitalists and investors and whatever, right? Because they hype up the idea and they feel excited about it, and that's the stories that those are the stories the media likes to tell. But again, most successful entrepreneurs are going to be over 30. They're gonna be people that have had experiences, that have grown in a certain way. So don't feel discouraged if you're not there yet. Okay, I wholeheartedly believe that you've got to slay a bunch of dragons before you find the princess. That's a saying that was shared with me, or find the prince, or whatever it is you want to use. You really just have to go through experiences, typically. A lot of different experiences and a lot of failures before you can reach the point where you can really build something truly successful. So be okay with that. All right, if you have any questions about the class, about this lecture, about any component that we've gone over today, feel free to reach out and we can have a discussion about it. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.